envelopes.
Well, being on the envelope only indicates to me that he wrote the letters before he went and did it.
Yeah.
It does.
So
All right, let's move forward a little bit more in time. We're going to move from that night, which is Thursday, to Sunday, which is the 10th. That Ford Corsair that he was driving was found 16 miles away from the Maxwell Scott's home.
Yeah.
In the car, they found blood. I never could tell because it was, I saw it listed or written as believed to be Sandra and Veronica's blood. I don't know if the technology was good enough at the time to be able to exact match it. I'm guessing that they couldn't.
They could match by type at least. I know that.
Yeah.
But they didn't do DNA back then.
Right. So that would explain why it was written that way.
Yeah.
So they found the blood. They found another lead pipe in the boot.
Which was also, by the way, partially wrapped in tape.
Surgical tape.
Yeah.
Yep, it was. There was a bottle of vodka. Don't know how much was in it. And the witnesses in the area has said they'd seen the car parked there early on Friday morning, which means it would have sat for several days.
But that also, I guess, that presents a problem for me too, because the timing of it seems really weird and quick. Because when did he attack? When did the attack happen?
9 o'clock at night on Thursday.
Okay, so it would have presumably been, what, an hour? I don't know how long those attacks happen.
Probably would have been under 15 minutes. I'm
Under
guess
15
the whole
minutes.
thing.
Well, there was the whole drama upstairs, you know. Like
But I'm going to give
her,
it
putting the kid to
25
bed.
minutes at the max.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then he lived how far away from the house?
From his house to
Yeah.
Oh, he
where his
lived-
wife lived. Oh, it was around the corner,
Around the
basically.
corner, so he had to go home.
Well, it wasn't actually around the corner. It was.
It was not far away.
About a mile southwest.
So we're saying,
Yeah.
like, he's leaving town at, like, 10:30?
Yeah. It's about an hour and a half's drive to the Maxwell Scott's. So,
Yeah, okay, I guess it could
So
have
he
been.
could have parked
Yeah.
the car any time in the wee hours of Friday morning, and that would totally line up with what the witnesses say.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Well, actually, the car was found in New Haven, about a mile from the harbor. And New Haven is, of course, on the English Channel.
Yes.
There were about 6 a.m. There were a couple of fishermen. I saw this in a documentary, and this was the words of an author who researched and wrote a book about this whole thing.
Yeah.
And a couple of fishermen were loading up their boat, preparing for the day's work, and they testified to having seen Lord Lucan at the harbor in New Haven at about 6 a.m.
There you go.
Yeah.
What he did from there, we're not sure. The lead investigator, one of the guys who wrote the books, Roy Ransom.
Yeah.
Great name.
It is. He's convinced that Lord Lucan committed the murders of Sandra and the attack on his wife. And then from there, he thinks that Lucan committed suicide.
Yeah.
Somehow. He doesn't speculate exactly how, whereas some others have.
Yeah.
But he, for a long time, he's since changed his theory, but for a long, long time he was sure that he'd done himself in. There was, of course, a inquest later on.
Right.
And he, not shockingly, was found guilty of the murder of Sandra.
Sure.
And because, well, there was really no defense.
But the thing
Only a
about-
prosecution.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it is he really incriminated himself because
By disappearing.
well, not just that, but he told people and he basically placed himself at the scene of the crime by telling people, "Oh, I was there." Because he told people I was going by and I rushed in to save her, you know, and so he placed himself there.
And we're going to talk about maybe one of the reasons why in the theory section. There is just one other little bit here about Lord Lucan. Because he disappeared, he was for a long time not declared dead.
Yeah, they have
Missing.
a standard set of time, right?
I think the family was, especially Lady Lucan. They delayed having him declared legally dead because apparently they would have had to pay death taxes, and they really couldn't afford it at the time, and so they actually waited a long, long time.
Yeah, till 1999.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
everything went into probate, and now they have it. There's some crazy things though. There's towns in parts of England and Ireland that officially the nobility, his family owned. So people were still having to pay to the Lucan family.
So I'm going to pay rent.
Yeah, because they were 999-year leases.
Yeah, no, I had heard that the family owns about 1,200 properties in Ireland.
Oh my goodness.
And but the other thing I heard is they're having a lot of trouble collecting rents on those properties.
They are.
Yeah.
And people are also just buying them out. Some people are saying, you know what, to heck with it, I'm just going to buy it out.
Mm-hmm.
So they finally probably have caught up on what they owed in the past.
Yeah.
It took a long time. But that really is the end of the story, and it leaves us with the two questions of, A, did he really kill Sandra and then attack his wife?
Wow.
And then after that, what happened to him? Where'd he go?
All kinds of possibilities there.
Yep. So we have a couple of whodunit theories, and whodunit theory number one is
Obvious.
that he's guilty, that he did it.
Kind of guilty of sin.
Well, if we look at it from the perspective of what is his motive, well, he's been jilted by the courts. He lost custody of his children. He probably feels like everybody has screwed him out of all these things that he's entitled to, which, when you think about it, through the course of his life, he got what he thought he was entitled to.
Yeah, he had
So when suddenly somebody tells him no, that doesn't sit well.
Yeah.
When I talked about his behavior before everything happened, I said it didn't really seem like he spiraled downhill. He just seemed to be okay. And maybe that was some form of emotional shutdown. People do that.
Oh, yeah.
You can't tell that they're a boiling cauldron of emotions because they're just acting normal until eventually it does overflow.
Yeah, he had a lot to be stressed about. I mean,
Yeah.
besides being massively in debt and not being able to pay his bills and losing his kids and everything, you know? And then there was that one little thing.
Yes, there was that one little thing.
Yeah.
Which came out last year. That's when that little thing that Joe keeps hinting at happened. There's a guy by the name of George Weiss, and he was evidently a member of the Claremont Club, and he played with John Bingham there.
Because everybody, I'm sure, did.
Yeah, because everybody did. And he was quoted in an article in the Mirror last year as saying he knew why Lord Lucan had snapped. And the reason was, according to him, is that Lord Lucan had sent a kitten to his children as a gift. And the kitten was sent back through his mail letterbox, which is the slot in the door that you get your mail through, with its throat cut.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's
Hours after he had
Who
it
would
sent
do
there.
that?
That's
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, seriously. I mean,
like, even if you were angry at this guy.
you don't kill the kitten. For Christ's
What?
sake.
That's my question, though. Is it okay? So who did the kitten in? Was it Lady Lucan? Was it Sandra? Was it maybe one of the children, or was it some other man that we don't know about?
I don't know.
There's a whole host of
That's
people. We have
crazy.
another murder mystery of who did the kitten.
Who murdered
in.
the
Really?
kitten. I know.
Who did?
Because that could really impact what happened later on.
Yeah, of course that's it. I mean, I don't know if Weiss is lying or if perhaps Lord Lucan lied to him. I mean, it's possible that none of this happened.
And
That's true.
keep in mind,
I mean,
he sat on this since 1974 and just suddenly comes out with
It's like, oh, I remember that thing.
Yeah, and I remember the Lucan family, they had a cat who lived in their house on Lower Belgrave Street, and generally, in my experience, the kind of people who own cats usually are not the kind of people who slit kittens' throats.
Yes.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, that's what dog people do.
Yeah,
I'm a
exactly.
dog person, and I would not.
I
do
know.
that.
No, that's
I know.
disgusting.
But it does make me question this bit about the kitten, because as we talked about before, and we'll probably talk about again, the British media trots this story out every year.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and again, you're right.
And they're every time.
Why did this guy sit in the dead kitten story for so many
And
years?
every time it's somebody with a new revelation.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
take that with a grain of salt.
Well, and in strong favor of the he did it is the question would be, what motive did he have to kill the nanny? But it's totally possible. They didn't look really the same. They were the same height and
Same
about
build.
the same build.
Same height. The nanny, I think, was just a little bit more thick-set than Lady Lucan, but
In the dark.
In the dark.
In the dark.
In the
So,
dark,
you know, if
it's-
it's pitch black downstairs and you think you've got, your wife who you are hating right now
Yeah.
and beat her up and then realize, oh, oops, that was the nanny.
What do we do?
What
Well,
do
we'll
I
stick her in the
do?
mail sack and we'll wait.
Yeah.
I mean, your plan has gone gone
Right.
pear-shaped right
'Cause
there.
that's the other part is what motivated him to kill the nanny.
And I believe it was a complete and total accident.
I would agree.
I think he was wrong place, wrong time.
Well, let's not forget though, he was paying her salary, and that might have been his way of cutting expenses.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
No, I don't
yeah,
think
no.
so, Joe.
I think it was.
No.
And again, this is another one of those things that's totally out of one of the detective novels.
I
It's
know.
Like, yeah,
This whole story is.
I know it really is.
I can't wait for the twist of like, oh yeah, by the way, this is actually just a novel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. By the way, the twist is going to be in the end that actually she murdered him and then self-bludgeoned. She murdered him, murdered the nanny, and then self-bludgeoned, and then ran down the street and ran into the pub. And I know.
No.
I feel connected to all of our listeners because they were doing the same thing as I'm sure as I was just doing, which is just shaking my
his head.
head.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I don't,
No,
you gotta love
no.
those kinds of devious twists, though.
Our next theory of who done it wasn't him. That's the next theory.
What? Who was it then?
There are people who say this.
There is a lot of people who say that. I mean, he left those letters and talked to his mother and attested his innocence. And some of his friends have stood by him. I mean, initially a lot of people said, yeah, he's probably innocent. Some of those guys changed their tune, but some of them have said he was innocent for 25 plus years. So they're really standing there. What is my hard part about his not having done it is there was no signs of forced entry into the house.
Yeah. So you're saying that essentially it was an entirely random thing. Somebody broke into the house, maybe to
Well, no,
burgle the place.
I'm saying it's hard to believe that he didn't do it because there's no signs of forced entry.
Mm-hmm.
The basement doors were locked. I don't think that a fleeing attacker would stop and lock the doors behind themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the back garden was walled. There was no signs of anybody, climbing the vegetation and breaking the branches to get out. Like we talked about the fact that, when the police recreated the scene, it's very hard to see in the window from the street unless you're bending down, which I still think is kind of hinky.
His theory does not hold water, his alibi does not hold water.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't.
And I think we talked about this a little bit in terms of the blood that was around. My other problem with him not being involved or guilty of doing it is that Veronica's blood was everywhere else but the basement kitchen.
Well, precisely, and
She
so
never made it down the stairs.
yeah, she didn't. So the attack on her took place at the top
But
of the
we've talked
stairs.
about
Her
this.
blood
No
was found at
light,
the top of
no
the stairs.
blood.
Yeah.
This doesn't work.
There's no way.
Yes. So let's move on to the next whodunit, which is a hitman. And there is theories out here that a hitman did it, and it says that he wasn't the one that committed the entire act.
He just hired someone to do
He
it.
hired somebody, and probably, like we said before, Sandra was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then everything went sideways. I'm guessing that he must have been at the house if this is true. He probably was sitting outside watching it, kind of reveling in the whole thing, and maybe got cold feet, or maybe he was in there with the hitman to see it all happen, and that's when it kind of went all out
One
from
of
under
the
him.
theories that I heard too is that he had hired a hitman, and then at the last minute he realized what an incredibly horrible thing he was doing, and he rushed down there to try to head it off.
Well, if he wrote those letters before, right, it's possible he hired a hitman to stage the exact situation that he said happened,
Yeah.
right? If he maybe realized, oh, I want Veronica back, or oh, I want to be a hero, or oh, I just want to scare her, whatever his motivation was, he had hired this hitman. It did go a little south, right? He expected it to be Veronica that was attacked because the nanny was supposed to be off, and he went in to save her, and then realized, oops, this person's dead. This did not go to plan at all, and then ran away. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, the only problem with that is that he went ahead and mailed the letters bloody and all when it was really kind of time for him to come up with a new story
yeah.
at this point in time. And so really, why would he go ahead and mail it? I mean, maybe he wasn't thinking straight, but...
I'm guessing he wasn't
Would
thinking
assume.
straight.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously the right thing to do at this point is to not mail those letters.
Yeah.
Start cooking up a new alibi.
Or like, don't leave the house. Hang out, knowing she's gonna go get the cops.
Yeah, and
hang out,
innocent.
be there,
Yeah.
and play the innocent card and say, I wasn't here, you guys. I'm sorry. How can I help in this?
Yeah.
Because that at the very least, it's way less suspicious if you're still sitting there.
Yeah.
When the cops come back and you're like, oh my gosh, thank
you
God
for
you're
coming.
you're
Yes.
here. Help us. Versus,
Disappeared.
oh, I better get out of here because I was just helping her.
I think at this point, though, I think he came to realize the hopelessness of the situation.
I also think that this, though there isn't a lot of support for this theory, I think there are some signs that it might be the right one,
Yeah.
and that's the car.
Yeah.
Because think about it this way. He sends the guy in. The guy mucks the whole thing up and kills the nanny. He goes in, he discovers it. He sends the guy outside, and the guy goes and sits in the car and waits. Okay, boss, I'll be waiting for you. Because there's blood in the car, and the hitman's going to have blood all over him from beating Veronica.
Yeah.
And then...
From beating Veronica or from beating the nanny?
Well, I think both. I think it's going to be both of them. He's going to have blood all over him, and that would explain why there was blood and hair in the car.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was, some of the stuff. I think that he was trying to break it up and as Devin put it, be the hero of the situation. And then he screwed it up. He takes off. He drops the guy off wherever he's going to drop him off for his final bit of time with him. And maybe he pays him. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah, if you kill the wrong person, I don't think you deserve.
I don't think you deserve to get paid. No.
But on the other hand, do you really look at the hitman and say, "Hey, screw you, I'm not paying you"?
Yeah, you probably don't.
Probably don't.
You
no.
say the check's in the mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a safe bet.
Yeah.
But that's personally, I kind of think that's probably the most likely scene.
I think-
I don't think he had the stones to do it
I don't
himself.
think he did either.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it, the reason I don't like the hitman theory is that Lord Lucan, whatever his faults, did love his children.
He did.
And the problem with sending a hitman by that to kill your wife is if one of your kids stumbles upon the scene.
Well,
then
and that's
your
why I
kid's
don't
gonna
think
get whacked too.
I don't think that it was the hitman was supposed to kill anybody. I think he was supposed to rough her up.
Oh, I see.
And then he would run in as the hero and chase the bad guy away, and she would realize how much she loved and needed him and welcome him back.
Now, generally, using a lead pipe to rough somebody up is not a good strategy. I mean, maybe
agree.
hitting somebody on the ribs and breaking a few ribs, but you don't hit them on the head.
Yeah, although again, the big question then is like she did try to reconcile with him. Maybe it was to make the house seem like a dangerous place for the kids, so he would get custody.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's 1,000 ways that that somebody may have thought that should play
Yeah, I don't
out
know.
in their
Yeah.
favor, but
But yeah, I don't think the hitman was trying to just rough her up because the lead pipe that he used.
it's a serious tool.
Well, it's not just a serious tool; it was bent. The lead pipe was bent.
That's some
that's
seriously
rough.
hard whacking.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cracking, smacking, and whacking.
Let's move forward to where did he go? Because we're done with whodunit. Now let's find out what happened to him.
Yeah, what did happen to him?
Yeah.
Well, the most popular theory is that he committed suicide.
Well,
Yeah.
It's let's see, his friend John Aspinall, who's a really wealthy guy on his own.
they're always
Who, by the
They
way,
are.
who by the way owns a couple of zoos.
He does.
That's his deal.
But I mean, he had nothing to gain from standing by Lucky Lucan all these years.
Sure.
But he said he probably didn't do it, but he probably did take the gentleman's out. Probably took a boat out, got out into the channel, pulled the plug in the middle of the boat, and sank with it.
do they
Yeah.
actually come with plugs?
Yeah.
Some boats do.
Some boats
they
do. They have
really?
drain. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a drain plug.
Yeah.
Oh.
Not all
Yeah.
of them, but yeah.
It's a real thing.
Well,
It's not just in Looney Tunes.
another theory that he put out there is that, and this would be a little easier to do, there's a ferry that leaves New Haven a couple of times a day, and goes to France. And so he could have either boarded the ferry or more likely maybe he snuck on board and stowed away, which would explain why nobody on the ferry remembered seeing it, but he could have just basically out in the middle of the channel jumped overboard.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, that's the primary way that everybody thinks that if he did commit suicide, he did it.
By drowning himself.
Drowning himself in the English Channel.
Well, yeah, and apparently he got, I think he got these from Susan
Maxwell
Scott.
Yes.
I think I believe he got a set of really strong sleeping pills from Susan Maxwell Scott.
I do remember something about that. I don't remember the exact details at this moment. But
Yeah, the thinking is that he took himself a huge dose of sleeping pills, and then when those were starting to kick in, flung himself overboard. And if he went over the side of the ferry, then unlucky for him, he probably got sucked into the screws.
Oh.
Yeah, bad
Okay.
ending. Yeah.
Let's move forward to our next theory of where
Hopped on the ferry at New Haven.
Think about it, Lord Lucan, he comes from money. He's got wealthy friends. He can do whatever he wanted when he was basically being a playboy almost. I mean, he did what he wanted. He could. And so it's quite possible that he got a hold of some of his friends and they said, "Whoa, mate, that's screwed up. We'll get you out of town."
Do it with the accent now.
No. And so they got him out of town. And you can pick your favorite country right now, and chances are good he was sighted in that country.
Ukraine.
I swear he's been sighted more than Elvis.
Oh, yeah, thousands of sightings.
Yes,
Yeah,
thousands
literally.
of sightings. There are two people who are the favorites for if we're going to say that he got spirited out of the country.
Okay.
The two people that are favorites are John Aspinall, as we said, and James Goldsmith.
Sir James Goldsmith.
Sir James Goldsmith, who was also a very rich man.
Yeah. Actually,
And-
the lady on Lady Lucan's website, she has something to say about that, believe it or not. She actually says on her website that those guys didn't like him all that much at all.
Really?
She said, yeah. She quotes somebody else. There's a guy who, and I've actually read this guy's stuff before. He writes a lot about politics, or at least he used to. But he also wrote a little bit about gambling, and apparently he knew the guy, the whole Claremont Club gang. So his name is Taki, and last name unpronounceable. He actually wrote in the Sunday Times, quote, this is regarding Sir James Goldsmith, he wrote, "Goldsmith was not particularly fond of Lucan," unquote. She wrote that. She also says on her website, John Aspinall was not one of the late Lord Lucan's best friends. Both James Goldsmith and John Aspinall have supported my version of events, namely that my late husband murdered Mrs. Rivet by mistake instead of me, and shortly thereafterwards committed suicide. They did not want their integrity damaged by a murderer.
That is
what
really
Lady-
funny because she's the only one who really puts that out there, and I love that says that she says my version of events. But I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there at the time. I don't know how much they did or did not like him, but those two guys are the prime candidates.
Oh yeah, they are. That's what everybody else says. But according to her, they didn't much care for him.
Huh.
And according to Taki Unpronounceable,
Unpronounceable.
they weren't his buddies either.
Well, according to the theory, what those two did is they helped spirit him out of the UK and get him to Kenya.
Yeah.
And then years later, they organized trips for his children to Kenya so that he could see them,
And-
unbeknownst to them.
And another one of these is Gabon also.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of these, but this one where it says that he went to Kenya, that is from Aspinall's secretary. She said that she did all these transfers and all this funny stuff,
Made up-
and years later
Got
figured
phony
out,
passports for them, I guess.
and then figured out who it was for. Or there's another version that says that he was flown, he went to a small airfield in Kent and then got on a plane heading to France. The person who helped him in this version is Susan Maxwell Scott. She's the one who organized the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that the source for this blatantly admits that he was told the story while in a pub. which really makes me question how much truth there is to it.
Yeah.
But the guy who's telling the story says that then it was his father who drove them to the airport, and then he himself went and picked up the Corsair and then drove it away and dumped it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's not
there's
the most
so many
credible
sightings,
story.
though.
I want to say about the whole thing about transporting the kids to Africa, where, and of course they didn't meet with him, according to that story.
He was watching them.
He watched them from a distance. I saw an interview that his son George did, the 8th Earl, and
Yes.
And actually he was quite intelligent and articulate, and I love the way he put this. He said, "I've never ever been to Gabon," and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Maybe it's Gabon, but anyway, he says, "I had never ever been to Gabon, and I guess I was supposedly transported down there with my sister." Then there, from my father could watch us or view us from some creepy distance.
Yes.
Was the way he put it.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was very dismissive of that entire story. He
Well,
said,
the whole
"No."
family's been dismissive of most of these theories that are out there, short of he went ahead and did himself in the channel.
Yeah.
But here's some of my favorite sightings.
Yeah, I want to hear them.
All right. He was sighted in Martin, New Zealand. There was an Englishman who was investigated as possibly being Lord Lucan, even though it turned out that he was just some English guy living in his Land Rover with his pet possum.
Did you see the picture of him with his possum? By
Yes,
the way?
I did.
Yeah, possums look a little different in New Zealand.
They do. They're different color and not nearly as ugly.
Yeah.
Never mind. Now, this is the best part. Everybody said it was Lord Lucan because it was a Brit, even though this guy was 10 years younger and half a foot shorter.
Of course.
But he was in a Land Rover.
Well, there you go.
So there you go.
So he had money, obviously.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Oh, this is awesome. He lived in Goa, where he was living the hippie lifestyle as Barry Halpin until his death in 1996, and he had the awesomest nickname ever, Jungly Barry.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty conclusively disproven. too,
Yeah.
if I don't.
He worked as a waiter in a San Francisco restaurant, and then because the IRA have to get involved in everything, the last one says that he was held hostage by the IRA, and presumably they were responsible for the attack on his family, I guess, and then before they killed him, or before he killed himself, he asked to be fed to the tigers at the zoo in Kent.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah,
Which,
I know.
by the way, was owned by
Aspinall. Yeah, I've heard that one too. The another theory that I've heard is that the underworld contacts, the shady underworld contacts that hooked him up with the hitman, realized that he was kind of a liability after the whole thing went south.
And knocked him off.
Yeah, so that's another theory.
Sure.
It's entirely possible at
Yeah.
this point with all the other craziness we've had going on.
Yeah,
But-
I'm inclined to believe he killed himself with a lead pipe on the ferry in the English Channel.
With the candlestick.
Yeah, I think that most likely he did himself in, and like I said, I personally think that he sent somebody into the house and then realized what a dumb idea it was. Probably what happened, but that's my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe that he didn't hire a hitman. He just went in there himself to do it. But kind of bungled the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he did it himself, he really did bungle the whole thing.
He really didn't think his crime too carefully. He should have really put a lot more thought into it.
He should have.
Yeah. One last thing is that in that Mirror interview with George the 8th Earl, he talked about how sick the family is of hearing of all these sightings. They're just so tired of it. They say people we're so tired of this. Yeah, he's not alive. He died. Please, everybody, accept it.
Yeah. Well, if you have any thoughts on this particular story or any other stories that you would like us to take a look at, you are more than welcome to send those to us. You can send that to our email address, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. We, of course, have our website where this and all previous episodes are, and as well as some of our research. That website is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. We are on iTunes, and I know a lot of people find us through there. If you do subscribe or you do listen to the show, do take the time to leave a comment and a rating. That always helps us move through the rankings and more people to find us.
A good rating.
You can, you can stream us from just about any site anymore, so I'm not really going to plug one. And we are on social media. We are on Facebook. We have a Facebook page and the Facebook group. Both of those are available to you. And we are also on Twitter. We are Thinkin' Sideways without that middle G. Mm-hmm. And of course, last but not least, if you're enjoying what we do with the podcast and you want to show your support, you're more than welcome to do that. We are on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Thinking Sideways. Completely voluntary, but that is something that you can do if you want to help out the show. That is all of it, if I think correctly.
I think we've summed it all up.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Get ready, guys. The next episode comes out in the month of October, which is a big month. It's a listener's suggestion, our top stories.
We're calling it Thinking Sideways Most Wanted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because these are our most suggested or highest voted stories to cover.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that for the entire month of October.
I know.
But we're not going to tell you what next week is.
Nope.
Well, we never do that anyway.
Big honking surprise.
All right, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
So, it was Choopy in the kitchen with a lead pipe.
Joe's just so wrong all the time.
I had to mention Choopy. I haven't accused Choopy of anything for a while.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply. What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey there, this is Steve, joined by...
Oh, Devin?
And Joe.
And you slap us in this steamy hot little room, and what do you get? You got Thinking Sideways, the podcast.
Yeah.
Because we're in a little room, and we're melting right now.
It's really hot.
It is hot.
And
We go to great lengths to make sure that the sound quality of our podcast is high.
which
involves...
means no fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, no AC.
I literally cannot read the text in front of me on the paper because I'm kind of sweating on it. It's kind of a gross thing.
It's super
my
gross.
eyes are sweating.
Your eyes are sweating?
Is that like the man version of crying?
Yeah, kind of.
Well, everybody, I know we've done this before, and we decided, based on some listener suggestions, that we were going to do another show of shorts, because we've got a number of stories that don't quite flush out to a full one, so we decided we'd just bring them all together and make one big show out.
Also because we're all wearing shorts.
All right, well, let's get into the first of our stories today,
Okay.
which I guess somehow I got voted to go first.
Yeah,
so
what are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about the crew of the Sarah Joe.
Oh, okay.
The Sarah Joe is a story that starts in Hana, Hawaii, which is, I believe, it's in Maui County, but I couldn't figure out if that was actually on the island of Maui or not.
Did you not just Google Maps?
I did Google Map it, but Google Map wouldn't say this island's name is Maui. It was really being a jerk.
And you don't... Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to
Yeah.
use maps.
All I know is that it's on the windward side of Maui.
The
about all I
westward
know.
side.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
he's using Bodhi Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bodhi talk, exactly.
So the story starts on February 11th, 1979.
Okay.
We've got 5 local men. They're construction workers. They've been working on a friend's house who is one of the 5. And they decide, we just need to take a break and we're going to take a fishing trip for the day. These 5 men, their names are Peter Hanchett, Benjamin Kalama, and I'm going to do my best with this, Ralph Malakayakini, Scott Mormon,
I think it's Malaya Kini.
Meusner.
Okay.
They all set sail for this trip. They borrowed a 17-foot Boston whaler, which had the name the Sarah Joe, thus the name of the story, the crew of the Sarah Joe. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, it's first thing in the morning, we're going to take off. And they leave first thing in the morning. Weather's nice, weather's fine. They leave. Nobody really worries about it. Except that afternoon, the weather gets a little nasty, the seas start to get rough, and by that evening, it's a terrible storm has hit the island, to the point that a brother of one of the men who was on the boat said that it was the roughest that he had ever seen the sea in that area get.
So it turns out going fishing wasn't such a hot idea.
No, it wasn't the best idea.
Why
ever.
didn't they just check like Yahoo Weather or something?
Yeah, exactly.
In 1979?
Yeah, what?
Yeah,
No?
exactly. According to this guy, the swells were 40 feet
Wow.
and breaking at the crest, and the winds were more than 40 miles an hour.
That's bad seas, man.
That's huge seas, especially when you're in a 17-foot boat.
I kind of wonder why they didn't just head right in when things started to kind of turn and the wind picked up.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we've talked about this fairly recently, that it turns out that one of the safer places to be in bad weather is at sea. Obviously, like,
Not in a tiny boat, though.
not in a tiny boat, but if your choice is, you've kind of missed your window,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Maybe
yeah.
you're like too far out. If your choice is stay at sea and try and ride it out, or try and make a super dangerous docking to get off this boat, you're probably just going to decide, well, we'll just see if we can't ride out these waves
Yeah.
instead of
Having no idea that this is not the worst of it, but it's
Yeah.
going to get worse.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly the point. Everybody starts getting concerned. So we've got Peter Hanchett. He's one of the guys that was on the boat. His father, John, got concerned and decided, even though this weather was terrible, to go out and look for him. And he was joined by a gentleman, a marine biologist in the area named John Naughton, I believe is how you pronounce
Yeah.
his name.
Yeah.
And Captain Jim Cushman, who was with the Coast Guard, the U.S. Coast Guard. And these two actually came in by, I believe it was the third day that the boat had been missing. So it wasn't that they all went out right away, but over time these people joined the search. No trace was ever found of the Sarah Joe
by the
in
way-
those searches.
By the way, they did also search by plane, etc. Correct?
They did. They sent out planes. I think they looked for about a week or two. The accounts vary.